Customs and Border Patrol form, and it shows that Jesus Campos entered the United States from Mexico at the San Ysidro border crossing in San Diego County almost exactly to the hour 1 week after the Las Vegas shooting at the beginning of October. Now, the document does not reveal how long Campos had been in Mexico. Our source told us that Campos entered the U.S. at the same crossing in January of this year. At that time, he was driving his own vehicle with Nevada plates. And yet, in this document from a little over 2 weeks ago, Campos was driving what appears to be a rental car with California plates. Now, this information raises a number of questions about the Las Vegas investigation and the crime itself. Jesus Campos is the only eyewitness to the biggest mass shooting in modern American history. At the time he was in Mexico, the press was reporting that investigators thought Paddock, Stephen Paddock, may have had an accomplice in these killings. Why did authorities allow Campos to leave the country just days after the shooting, while the investigation was still chaotic and, of course, ongoing? How did Campos, who reportedly had a gunshot wound to the leg from a high-powered rifle round, manage to travel to Mexico? Did he fly? Did he drive? Was his employer aware that he left the country? Were investigators aware? Did they facilitate the trip? What day did Campos get to Mexico? How was he able to drive back for hundreds of miles from the San Diego border back to Las Vegas? Why did he take a rental car instead of his own car? The union that represents Campos told us they were aware that he left the country. They claim it was a pre-planned visit. Why did it take a government leak for the rest of us to find that out? Why has MGM been so intent on controlling availability to Campos, booking him on the Ellen DeGeneres show and shielding him from press inquiries? Why did he appear with a co-worker in the Ellen interview rather than solo? Why did Ellen ask only leading softball questions? Why have so many people gone to so much trouble to shape the story of Jesus Campos? ABC spoke to Campos on October 4th. Was he in Mexico when they talked to him? Did they know where he was when they talked to him? What do we actually know about Jesus Campos? For example, is he really a licensed security guard? We checked today, and it turns out he's not registered with the state of Nevada's Private Investigators Licensing Board. Confused by this, we called the Clark County Sheriff to find out what license is required to be a security guard at a Las Vegas casino. The Sheriff's office refused to tell us this. Jesus Campos is a victim, the spokesman said. We don't speak about victims. Naturally, we repeated the question. He became angry, he started yelling, and ultimately hung up on us. Which raises the question, why won't authorities answer basic questions about Jesus Campos? And here are a few more. Does Jesus Campos have a criminal record? Not attacking him. It's an honest and obvious question. What exactly did he do for the hotel? Had he ever had previous contact with Stephen Paddock? How exactly was Campos injured? Countless press reports claim he was shot in the leg with a rifle round from an AR-15 style rifle, probably a NATO 5.56 round. That bullet travels at 3 times the speed of a handgun round. It could easily destroy a man's leg and often does. Given that, how could Campos possibly have driven 700 miles from Las Vegas to the Mexican border and back less than a week later? And then there's Stephen Paddock, the shooter. We still know essentially nothing about him. Even the most basic questions about his behavior remain unanswered, such as, how did he get access to the hotel's freight elevator? How many other hotel guests had that access? Does surveillance video from the casino show Paddock entering the elevator alone or with others? Had he used that elevator before? If so, how often and why was he using that elevator? More broadly, had Stephen Paddock ever previously appeared on the radar of the FBI? Here was a man gambling millions of dollars and stockpiling weapons and ammunition. His name was all over federal databases. Nobody in law enforcement noticed him? We learned today that Paddock's computer is missing its hard drive. Why did it take nearly a month for investigators to tell us that? Did they just find out themselves? We don't know. What do we really know about Paddock or his family? His brother was recently arrested on child pornography charges. Was that part of a separate investigation? Was it related to this case? How many family members does he have exactly? Was he in regular contact with them? Did they have any reason to believe he was planning an attack? And by the way, where's his girlfriend? We could go on. The point is, this story gets murkier by the day, and that is the opposite of what is supposed to happen. It's impossible to know exactly what is going on with the Vegas shooting. We're not going to speculate. But it's obvious that there is lying and incompetence at the heart of it.
Phase 1 of President Trump's promise to build the wall over the next month. U.S. customs officials will test 8 prototypes for a barrier along the southern border. But whichever version they pick, one thing is for sure. Between the arguments over the wall, legalizing the DACA program and bringing in a skills-based system, as we heard from Senator Perdue on this show last week, immigration will remain one of our most pressing issues. I'm an immigrant myself, twice over. My parents fled from communist Hungary to the UK, and now I'm, well, here. And I am proudly pro-immigration. But that doesn't mean I'm pro-open borders. I'm for controlled immigration, something we haven't had for a long time. How many people we welcome here, and which people, are crucial questions. Of course, the left doesn't even want to ask those questions, never mind answer them. In the last decade, they've turned into extremist open borders ideologues. But while they label any deviation from open borders ideology as racist, they don't seem to realize that their own position is fundamentally elitist. Why? Because our broken immigration system is actually the direct and intended result of a big business swamp that sucks in cheap labor only to throw American workers on the scrap heap. Immigration exploitation is tonight's Swamp Watch. Disney CEO Bob Iger, who's rumored to be running for president in 2020, along with pretty much everyone else, is really a very caring, principled, progressive kind of guy. You can tell that from the way he responded to the Trump administration's DACA announcement. Quote, "Dreamers impacted by this cruel and misguided decision make significant contributions to our economy and our country, and I urge Congress to take immediate bipartisan action to pass legislation that will protect these innocent people." Well, I guess Bob Iger would know all about cruelty when it comes to immigration. A program intended to bring specialized workers to America to help our economy, the H-1B visa program, is instead being abused by big business to replace American workers with cheaper substitutes from overseas. And Bob Iger's Disney is one of the worst offenders. In 2015, Disney laid off 250 employees and transferred their jobs to immigrants brought in from India by HCL, an outsourcing company. To add insult to injury, some of the fired Disney workers were required to train their replacements. As one of them put it, "I just couldn't believe they could fly people in to sit at our desks and take over our jobs." Exactly. It was so humiliating to train somebody else to take over your job. I still can't grasp it. Quite. You might even call it cruel and misguided. Don't you think, Bob Iger? But it also undermines the whole argument for H-1B visas. They're supposed to be for workers that are so exceptional you can't even find them in America. If that's really true, why are these imported workers being trained by the Americans they're replacing? It's not just Disney, of course. The same swampy abuse is going on at many other US companies. Last year, 80% of the top 10 recipients of these H-1B visas were mass outsourcing firms like HCL, Infosys, and Tata Consulting Services. They are the pimps of this economic exploitation, and their clients in corporate America should be ashamed of themselves. But the main victims of big business's globalist addiction to imported cheap labor are not white-collar workers, but working-class Americans. And it's only when you see the actual numbers that you realize why the elitists are so relaxed about open borders and uncontrolled immigration. A detailed study found that the higher the level of immigrant workers in any industry, the higher the level of unemployment in those professions. So, in farming and agriculture, with 36% of the jobs filled by immigrants, the unemployment rate for American farm workers was nearly 12%. In construction and mining, 24% immigrants, over 12% American unemployment. But then look at entertainment and the media. Only 11% immigrants and 6% American unemployment. Although I guess there's a few more now from the Weinstein Company. But here's my favorite. The one profession least affected by immigration? Lawyers. Only 7% of them are immigrants. And the bad news for the rest of us is that just 2.7% are unemployed. But there's one more step in really understanding the immigration exploitation swamp. Lawyers, the single profession least affected by immigration and with by far the lowest unemployment as a result, they make up 0.4% of the population, according to the American Bar Association. Guess what percentage of Congress are lawyers? 42% of the House and 59% of the Senate. No wonder our lawmakers keep telling us that immigration doesn't cost jobs or cut wages. It doesn't cost their jobs. It doesn't cut their wages. But it does if you're a farm worker or a construction worker or a manufacturing worker or a cleaner or any of the other American workers that corporate America and all the rest of the elite are happy to throw on the scrap heap so they can boost their profits by importing cheap labor. It is a total disgrace, and if we want a fair and just society, it has to stop. Stay with me, there's more. What about the elitist argument that there's a labor shortage, unemployment's at record lows, we're at full employment, they say. We have to import workers to keep the economy going. What planet are these people on? You go anywhere except Silicon Valley, Hollywood, Wall Street and Washington and tell me there's full employment. The most comprehensive study of what's actually going on with jobs in our country showed that the male work rate has fallen to Depression-era levels, with 1 in 6 American men of working age not working. Here's another thing the elite say. You can't get Americans to do the kind of jobs we need. What are they talking about? Let's just take farming, the example that's always used. Only about 4% of the illegal immigrant population works in farming. And how many states list farming as the predominant occupation of illegal immigrants? None. Americans already do 3 out of 4 farm jobs. They just don't want to work for the exploitative poverty pay that big business prefers whenever they can get away with it. The Texas Tribune conducted an investigation last December about illegal immigrants working for huge corporations. They focused on a slew of Target stores in the Lone Star State that had subcontracted out their overnight cleaning work, effectively paying illegal immigrants as low as $4.35 an hour. They found that, quote, employers skirt culpability by accepting fake documents that they are not legally required to verify, misclassifying workers as independent contractors, or subcontracting to separate businesses that do the actual hiring. Boston's Logan Airport had 14 illegal immigrant janitors arrested. Again, they came out with the same old corporate claptrap, blame the subcontractor. That's right. Blame the subcontractors, blame the economy, blame American workers, blame everyone except your own heartless and unpatriotic mania to cut costs at any price, even if it means devastating unemployment for working Americans and their families. Let's be clear, immigrant workers are not the enemy here. They're just doing their best for their own families, and no one should blame them. They are just as much the exploited victims of an immigration swamp designed and maintained by corporate CEOs, their lobbyists and their corrupt stooges in Congress, all colluding to help the rich get richer while working Americans get screwed.